And good morning. Welcome to the Old School Podcast, a podcast about the American education system. Its quirks, its qualities, its foibles, but on the whole, everything that makes it work and not work, we've discussed it. Today, we're going over something different, however, and with me in that endeavor is my good friend, Dr. Stephen Bourgeois. Good morning, sir.
Similar. I hit this mental pause, and that happens a lot more as I get older. I just start thinking, and then I forgot what I was thinking about, and then here I am. But I was
Do you
trying to,
remember where you are now?
I do, yeah. Why am I here? Uh, but I was wondering what was going well in education, and that might be a really short episode, if we.
There's
uh,
some very fine people doing a lot of good work,
oh yeah, yeah. But it's
toiling
not.
away in obscurity and working against a tidal wave of bad ideas and policies. And so
That's right. Um, but it's not that entertaining. It's a lot of work and a lot of frustration.
it's
Um,
a grind.
I can't believe we did that for so long. And this is supposed to be a motivational speech to new teachers.
Is it?
Yeah,
Is
what
that
were we
is
thinking?
that what we're supposed to be doing?
I think so. No, there's a strange thing that happens when and it's not the Stockholm syndrome, so don't start thinking about that. But But
Much
as
housing?
you're in the middle of a career, you have this image. How could I ever do anything else? This is exactly what I should be doing, and everything outside of that just wouldn't work. And that's being honest. There's something about it when you're in the throes of it and in your prime that, yeah, there's nothing like it.
It's also a lack of imagination. But yes, I mean, I think when you're knee deep into something, the all of your efforts are towards that something. Um, so perhaps you should not be too imaginative. Otherwise, you you start to lose your verve, as it were. So
I don't know. You're now becoming a killjoy because I was like waxing whimsical about the beauties of the profession. I mean, sure, you can get a job, and your coworkers, the people you spend your day with, may like you. They may not care or anything, but your students love you. In their own way, they really do. And you don't get that in any other profession. Where people you're molding minds, and you're actually having an effect, and they know it, and you know it, and the American people know it.
well, that's true that you have a level of influence. Although I would suggest that you can go anywhere and be both liked and disliked. So that in and of itself is neither here nor there. But I would agree that teaching perhaps provides a unparalleled level of influence when you compare it to other jobs. And
But
so
it,
yeah,
but it's does something else though. And it doesn't just stroke your ego as you walk into a room. I mean, they don't stand up. I tried that in German class for a little bit. I'd walk in and I said, "Now this is what they do in Germany in elementary school. I'd like you to stand up when I enter the room." And nothing of the kind happened after the first time I cajoled them into doing it.
you froze for about 10 seconds.
No,
So
no,
I
no. You were the one was frozen. I just kept talking. I was filibustering.
no, I
So I'm blaming you because we don't freeze over here, Miller.
I don't know.
We'll, we'll
You
check.
look pretty frozen to
No,
me,
no,
but
no. We'll check the transcript. But either way, I was
okay.
talking and it was high level stuff. Um, so you're trying to bring this conversation down. I can, we're talking about the beauties of being a teacher and the life of a teacher. And you're saying, well, you could get that doing something else.
No, I just said that there are unique elements to being a teacher that you cannot find in other jobs. I mean, I did it for 30 years. I mean, I like it. I mean, it's a good gig,
I
you
don't,
know.
I don't believe you, Cole Thornton.
I mean, there's a reason you left the field. There's a reason I
Yeah,
left the
I
field.
aged out. I
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I mean, we both knew guys and gals that stuck around much longer than they should have.
Oh yeah, well everybody
It
does. Yeah.
it's because the
Oh,
charm of the job, much like the charm of anything, a good cafe, a good woman, that after a while it slips,
A good cafe, good woman.
Well,
My
coffee is
goodness.
important, so but it's fine. It's fine if it slips. It's fine if it's no longer your raison d'être. That's French,
Oh,
But
ooh.
yeah, so it's fine if it doesn't hold your attention for time and memoriam. I mean, it's okay.
It goes up
I
and
did it.
down.
Yeah, it goes up and down. Like,
Uh,
yeah, so uh
I had periods of burnout that lasted year to year. Um, I would be burned out of teaching, but I loved coaching, and then when I got to the classroom, I see the textbook on my desk and I'd say, turn to page 33. And that's our lesson plan for today, and then other times I did it right, so it goes up and down for sure.
hmm.
But once you're burned out, you've said this, was this your line or did you steal it about once you start talking about retirement?
No, Bill Parcells said that. He said once you start talking about retirement, you're retired. Because automatic because your thinking is not, and like you said, we've talked about this, but I, that last year, those last months, it was hard to think about the job, not so much because I was obsessed with the notion of retiring, but because everyone else was obsessed with my notion of retiring. So they constantly wanted to ask me, are you counting down the days? Are you doing this? And it wasn't me that was getting in the way of my professionalism and focused on the job. It was everybody else that was getting in the way. And so it was yeah, it was tricky. It was difficult.
Wow. But they were projecting onto you and thinking, boy, you have to be really happy right now. Those retired guys, they have it made.
Well, I mean, I guess compared to the poor schmucks that are getting up every morning to go to a job, yes. But I mean, but as far as like but at that moment, I was very cognizant of that quote because I did not want to mail it in. There's nothing worse than a teacher on their last legs just mailing it in that last year or last couple of years. I've seen that too,
You can't do it. But that's the discipline of Herr Miller. And I think I possess that as well. You can't just go through the motions, no matter whatever you're doing, but particularly teaching, and you'll get your ass kicked. I mean, you'll get eaten up as soon as
because the students know the teachers that have given up.
oh yeah, no, they can tell, and
Yeah.
so they'll react to that, and actually it'll be a tougher last 3 months if you adopt that. Putting the feet up, wearing the Hawaiian shirt, looking at the score like Mark Harmon did for summer school.
Like a sports page.
Yeah, yeah.
So one of the quotes that has often driven us, and we brought it up, was
Oh,
from The Hunt for Red October.
are you going to read the whole thing? Because I think you should read it all.
I don't have the whole thing in front of me, but I
Oh,
mean, do you have the whole thing in front of you?
yeah, but you have a radio voice, so I'm gonna
Mhm.
put it into the chat. You know where the chat is here, Miller?
The chat. Where's the chat? There it is.
Yeah, you why don't you
Yeah.
read it
Okay.
whole thing and
So, so to kind of set the stage, the film is Hunt for Red October, and the Russian captain, a guy by the name of something or another, played by Sean Connery,
Ramius?
he
Ramius?
Ramius, that's it, Ramius.
Winston Ramius.
And
Yes.
so he is in the bigger picture, as you find out later on in the film, he has it in his mind that he is going to defect, and he's taking the sub and all of his top officers with him.
He's a Russian?
He's a Russian.
So why is he
Is he-
being played by an Irishman, by Sean Connery?
First of all, he's Scottish. I think that would cause massive for all of our listeners in Scotland. I apologize for my colleague's ill-informed opinion, but yes, it's a Russian with a Scottish accent, but we had to suspend belief here a little bit. But anyway, his modus operandi is that you work, and he kind of sneers at the notion of enjoying oneself. And so he gives a message to the crew. We will pass through the American patrols. He's telling the boat basically everything that they're doing
So wait
and
a
they're
minute.
going to do.
Where are they? They're parked on our coast. Where are they?
Well, right now they're in the Atlantic and they're headed south.
Headed south.
And
Okay.
he said that we will pass through the American patrols, pass through their sonar nets, lay off their largest city, and listen to their rock and roll while we perform missile drills. Then, and when we are finished, the only sound they will hear is our laughter while we sail to Havana, where the sun is warm, and so is the companionship. A great day, comrades. We sail into history. And it's that,
You like butchered the quote.
yes, I did. I did. So, because I can't see, I was looking, I was trying to, but anyway,
Okay.
but the idea behind it is that when other people's inclination is to goof off or to have fun, that there is something to be said about the inclination to work and to work hard. So I know would never declare yourself to be a stoic. Maybe you have at some point in your life or not, but this was something that the Stoics talked about a lot. And that was the idea of routine and self-discipline. And usually when people talk about stoicism, they talk about Marcus Aurelius because he wrote a book called Meditations. And, most people, if they know anything about the Stoics, they know about Marcus Aurelius, they know about Stoicism. There were other guys there, but his writing is the one that has gone down through history and by most accounts best encapsulates the idea. Where do you think you got your idea about the importance of work in the face of relaxation and what has stoked it as an adult? Because, we're all given, groundwork by our parents, but something else usually has to accompany it for us to carry it on throughout our entire lives.
Well, all it takes um, is for us to say we will conduct missile drills to know what we're getting at. Um,
Yeah.
and there's something about the notion of when other people are playing around, you're working. I mean, I use that with my youngest son when I was teaching him to play tennis, and we were out on the court often at night, and under the lights, and we'd look around, and I said, "Where is everybody? Where are all your teammates? Where are all your friends right now?" And he said, "Well, they're home playing video games." And I said, "And what are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm running lines and hitting 1,000 forehands and 1,000 backhands." And and that was the lesson. And I'd always take a picture of it and look at that look. And there's a little anger, eye of the tiger type thing, but also pride in that moment. And we repeated that many times. And I think that has a effect. So I tried to teach that to my kids. The other lesson was to always do more. If
Hmm.
you're assigned this, you do more. Um, as far as when that, I kind of developed that idea. That's hard. As tracing back, the earliest was in music. I would say in seventh grade when I started taking piano lessons, and I don't know why it developed this way, but whenever the piano teacher would give me she'd write in a little book what I needed to do for the next week, little with a date. And so I'd come to the next lesson and she'd say, "So what did you do this week?" And I said, "Well, I learned this piece, the other piece. In addition, I learned these other three." And I liked that somehow. And she enjoyed that, and that sort of became the narrative musically and in athletics and everything, but always doing more.
So this notion, though, flies in the face of current and past cultural preferences. And the Stoics talked about it. There's a very famous part of meditations where Aurelius says, the first thing you do in the morning is you have to convince yourself to get out of bed, and he said the reason why it's hard is because it's comfortable. You're underneath the bed, you're underneath the duvet or covers or what have you. It's comfortable. And but what he does is that he basically says you were not meant for this. That you were not meant to stay underneath these covers. You were not meant to seek out comfort. Now, the Stoics also suggested that there was room for balance, but at the same time, the fact that we are so easily seduced by what's comfortable, we're so easily seduced by what's fun that sometimes it can sabotage anything that we seek out to do professionally or in an important sort of a way.
Well, fun, even happiness. And I think that's something that one of our favorite philosophers said that, Nietzsche said that we do not seek, or I do not seek happiness, I seek my work. And where does that come from? I mean, as a kid, do you get that? Something happened, to generate that idea, but we were made to work, to be productive, but not to just rest. We need rest, but as soon as you take it too far and you're luxuriously lying down, maybe we get antsy. There's something about the need for activity in there that precludes the joy of resting.
So there is there is a danger here. And the danger is, how much do you work? How much do you grind it out? How much do you conduct missile drills?
All the time.
Well, because the Stoics would say that there has to be a balance, that the most important thing that you can do is self-control, because you're bending the flesh to the will of the mind. And that by doing so, you teach the body that the mind is the one that's in control here, not it.
Right.
The body will always seek the soft path, or the kind of the lackadaisical or quote unquote fun path, but the mind has got to be able to bend the flesh to the will of the mind in order to be able to stay productive. At the same time, the Aurelius talks about, you have to find time for a walk. You have to find time for physical exercise. Although he kind of framed physical exercise as also the mind dominating the body. But you have to find time for this. You have to find time to read, because it's about sharpening the brain. It's about sharpening the tool that will then control the body, that will control the urges. But still, there's that balance. I think most people think about it, if they know anything about world philosophy, they may think about something like Taoism, the fact that there has to be a balance between both things that are in your life. I would suggest it needs to be a little bit more towards the productivity than the leisure, but at the same time, that's part of what makes a person better. Do you have a sense of that line? I ask because I think I know the answer.
You're saying I work too much and I should spend more time watching baseball. Um,
Not necessarily, no, no, not necessarily that.
no,
No,
you thought it. Admit it.
no. But the idea is that being disciplined is good and is desirable, but it cannot make up the idea of work cannot make up the sole focus of one's life. There has to be other things. And even as ridiculous as you are with how hard you work, you still find time to read.
Oh,
You
yeah.
still find time to do things with your kids. You still find time to kind of explore other things. And so, even though we joke about the fact that you work a lot and you work probably harder than you need to, there is still this in you. You have an understanding that there has to be rest, that there has to be enjoyment, there has to be things that you pursue that's not directly aligned with why you're on this planet.
Well, there's something about getting really good at a few things, and that takes a lot of time. And they talk about 1,000 hours or 10,000 hours to be
And
really
that's it.
to be great at something. And
The Malcolm Gladwell
yeah,
kind of notion.
um, and I think about the time I've sat at a piano, that would dwarf that number.
Yeah.
Uh, but there's something about the concept of sunken costs that you've invested this amount of time and you want to just keep pushing in that area. And so I've tended to pick a few areas and keep pushing. But what's hard to understand is, there's also a competitive element, in there, which means that you want to not only develop yourself but you want to do it, you know, in excess of others. Uh,
Hmm.
it's like was it Genghis Khan or Attila the Hun who said it's not only important that I succeed, but that everybody else fails. I think that was that Genghis Khan? Some white
Yes,
man.
Genghis Khan. Yes.
He wasn't a white man, actually. Yeah, come to think of it. But so the will to compete, to dominate in some way, uh, once you take it so far, you feel like just that. Somebody else is out there practicing, is in there
Hmm.
chasing, and they're relaxing, sitting around. Um, so there's always somebody out there, you know, pressing and working harder than you, and you can't have that. So that's to me, it's ingrained. I don't like the idea. One last example, going to work. I always insisted that I was there about an hour before whoever my boss was would arrive.
Mm.
And it was
Yeah.
important that they saw that car there. And then I would be staying at work an hour after whoever my boss was, uh,
Mm.
after they left for home. I would never leave during that time. And that was a discipline always. If I had a principal, they better get out of there because I'm not leaving. So but I took that with me.
However, there is another side to this, and we see the exact same attitude across the board. That you were given a couple of examples, Chinggis Khan, others. The first thing that I think about is was during the 1960 presidential race
Mhm.
when Kennedy's campaign manager, every time Kennedy wanted to stay in bed longer, usually because he had been doing other stuff at night, was he would say, "What do you think Nixon is doing right now?"
Good.
And that would Kennedy would jump out of bed. I think, but the idea of control, first of all, the Stoics would say it's a question of self-control, that it should have nothing to do
Right.
with and should not be influenced by the control of others
Uh-huh.
or what others are doing. And so while there is a danger in having no discipline, there is also a danger in too much discipline. That the extremes cause an equal share of problems. And so the idea about controlling your body, controlling your mind, controlling how and what you do, this is about making you better in some ways as a person, making you better in the profession that you've chosen, but it's also to help kind of shape the idea that there are things other than the work. And so,
Mhm.
um, do you find yourself out of step with that? Because, like I said, you do have those other interests. You do these other things. Do you really think that you're that out of step with the notion of, you know, too much discipline?
I don't know. Um there was the program of Franklin Covey has all these things that you're supposed to do. Start with the end in mind. And I was hoping that you would remember another one while I was thinking about the next. But the one that has to do with rest and relaxation is called Sharpen the Saw. And I always
Mm.
thought that was funny in a way. Uh, but because but 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 maybe getting away mentally from those areas, it is important, and I mean, I do spend a lot of time watching sports. Somebody's got to watch all those football games, but I don't watch them maybe in the way that you do. I mean, we watch games together, but I'll put it on, then I'll be reading, philosophy right next to me, and then I'll jump in when it gets interesting. So I'm not going to sit and watch a game and attend to everything and listen to what those people are talking about, unless it's the great Tom Brady, because you should listen to what he has to say. Uh, but for the most part, I'm more passive unless it gets good, and then I'll watch. But yeah, I spend and as said, do things with the family, not nearly enough. If we compare over our adult careers, how many vacations we've taken, can you remember the last time the bourgeois family took a vacation? You know,
Isn't that cruise?
yeah, yeah, that's right. Pretty good.
Hmm.
So that was a long time coming, and so
Yeah.
we didn't, we couldn't, we weren't always able to anyway, but,
Hmm.
but the idea of traveling for pleasure, it takes me about 3 days to let go a little bit and then maybe enjoy it until I start looking forward to getting back. But traveling is hard. Vacations have always been difficult for me. Summer breaks, as a college student, high school student, I would sit in front on by the fireplace. And I remember after I'd say I'm bored. That's it. Uh, After everybody, all this anticipation of a break. And so what I
Hmm.
would do in the summer in college would be to go to the bookstore and purchase all the books for the courses I was going to take the fall semester, and I would read everything before the semester start. And
Hmm.
that was my summer um, reading, and
Hmm.
so I don't know. It's a there's a bit of obsessiveness in this. Um, and then the type of things that people would say are relaxation, like, oh, why don't you go play tennis? You know, to me, tennis means something entirely different. Again, it's getting really good at something and dominating people, and so that's the outlet. But it's still the same theme, I guess. It's still, even the hobbies aren't casual.
It is interesting when you listen to the Stoics and you read the Stoics, a lot of them, I mean, we categorize them in general as philosophers, but usually when you think of the word philosophy or philosopher, you think about some doughy, pasty, indoor cat, corpulent and just sitting there, just spends all of his time writing. But at the same time, all the major philosophers from that school, I mean, they were athletes. And not surprisingly, a lot of their metaphors that they used in their writings were sports related. There was one who was a wrestler, there was one who was a runner. There was, they did various things, and it was the idea of doing stuff that's hard. They did talk about a balance, and you may, if you're listening, you might saying, well, listen, there's a good emphasis on work-life balance. But the work-life balance that usually most people talk about is with an emphasis on the non-productive aspect of that balance. It's not based upon the work aspect of it. And in the same way that Aurelius would say that you were not put on this planet to be comfortable and to be dormant. This in that same line of thinking, the balance cannot be about excessively trying to find the relaxation. It has to be about fitting relaxation as a part of the productive element of why you're here on this planet.
The the equilibrium, maybe for most people, is rest. Um, and it could
I
have
guess it depends on what the other side of that is.
That's right. But there's a passage in Goethe's Faust where Mephistopheles, Satan, is talking about the human tendency towards eternal rest. That's where people have. I mean, it sounds like a death instinct, uh, uh, but wanting this stasis to sit, and he said that it's his purpose, as the devil, to prod people to activity. And that's a big thing in Faust is the idea of striving. It's a German thing also. The nature is to constantly strive, and but that so there's definitely a tension. But as we get older, we get to this point where we look at the calendar and look at the clock and look at the time we have left and think, well, what do I want to do with the time? Do I want to rest? Do I want to retire? Um, or do I want to continue to press and challenge and work? I can't imagine actually retiring and not having something that I'm pushing towards some ridiculous goal, some dragon to slay, whatever you want to call it.
Mm.
Because then as soon as you find yourself, in that retired state with nothing to get up for that's meaningful and challenging. I think the challenge is the big thing. Without a challenge, that's when we grow old and die, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why Aurelius woke up every morning at 5 o'clock,
Hmm.
because it sets a tone from the get-go that there is a purpose to getting up.
Hmm.
Um, and to go towards what you were talking about,
Hmm.
we're both at a point in our lives where we think about the fact that there are probably more years behind us than there is in front of us. But the people who talk about the idea that life is short typically talk about it in terms of, well, they have the wrong contextual approach to it.
Hmm.
The idea behind the idea that life is short is that you're running out of time to accomplish the things that you need to accomplish or that you should accomplish. That because of why we're here, you were meant to various degrees, you're meant to spend your life towards that pursuit. And so the fact that life is short is it's a kind of a pithy little saying. And usually people talk about it in terms of doing things that are fun and the things that you want. But we're not here to enjoy ourselves, as Wittgenstein would say.
Hmm.
We were here to do something. And so that's the clock that's ticking.
But in addition, those choices of how you spend your time become more, they have more weight. Um, and so I'm always deciding. I mean, last night, this sounds strange, but I watched a couple of documentaries, one on the the Berlin Philharmonic, two of their conductors, Herbert von Karajan and then Claudio Abbado, who followed him. And it played out within the change in Germany with the fall of the DDR, the East Germany. Um, but they're watching them and their approach to the all of the preparation, with the and kind of fighting this monster, which is a philharmonic orchestra, to get it to do exactly what your mind did. And these particularly von Karajan, he had a lifetime contract with them, and so he was rather old, and but still trying to tame that and get the vision that he had mentally from, say, Beethoven or Brahms, and get that out of that orchestra. And when he would conduct, he closed his eyes, and so he prepared them to the point where he could have that experience, and it translated to the audience. And so that, anyway, that's what I was watching last night, and that to me felt like a use of that time that was productive, and but it communicated something in a way unexpected. Just how much work went into getting that moment on stage with that incredible. I mean, it's the most, talk about having the best possible life as a musician, being in charge of the best musicians in the world and working with them and negotiating and prodding them to squeeze out the performance that you have in your head. That to me, that's an example of time really well spent.
And to jump on with that,
Mhm.
but go towards something that people would kind of associate the music as all about fun and good times and what have you.
Right.
the most seminal album of the Beach Boys' career was a album called Pet Sounds. And Brian Wilson, who was the one of the leaders of the Beach Boys, but he was the main arranger
Mhm.
of their music. All the other Beach Boys talk about the idea that we did that 44 times. We went over this over and over and over and over again. And what people respond to is only the end result, but they don't have that kind of understanding of everything that happened leading up to that point.
Mhm.
At that air of fun, good times, California sun, or whatever the case may be, it was predicated by hours upon laborious hours in a studio, constantly going over the exact same thing over and over again, a series of minute changes
Mhm.
that were designed to create that magical fit into whatever was in Brian Wilson's head.
Mhm.
And so even in the things that we may see as a an element of fun and capriciousness was actually the product of that same kind of discipline that that composer had in bending that orchestra to his will and to what his the music that was in his head to be able to have that produced by all these individuals.
It's a really great example, um, because it does seem light and easy,
Mhm.
the unbearable lightness of being, you know? It just of all the strange examples, the Beach Boys are one that feels, just like they throw it away and it's easy, but it's
Mhm.
perfect, but yeah, you don't see the suffering behind it. And I
Mhm.
think that's a artistic principle as well, but I think it's also a principle of living. Yeah, yeah, the effort you put into doing something and doing something well, it definitely pays off, but it doesn't pay off in an easy way. Um,
Right. I saw a documentary on Carol Kay. She was the famous bassist in the Sessions. Well, she played for thousands upon thousands of musicians, but she was an instrumental part of those sessions for
mhm,
Pet Sounds. And she talked about the idea of though it was tiring, though it was tedious, it made the result that much more rewarding when you finally got there.
right.
And for everybody who said that sounded good, that last one, it didn't sound as good as the finished product when Brian Wilson said, "There, we did it. That's what we're looking for."
You think of film directors and they can wear out an actor sometimes
Yeah.
intentionally to get get something. I know we drank a toast to Robert Redford passing this past
Yes.
week, and you had the feeling that he didn't have that many multiple take scenes.
Mm,
Because he seems to have that perfection and ease. I
mm,
I notice the same thing with John Lennon when you see him in the studio. Every take is perfect, just
mhm,
natural. Um, but directors can wear out an actor with do it again, and all they're doing is getting a lot of film that they can look at later and see. And who knows which of those takes is going to be the best. I wonder if that
mhm,
last take is actually better than the first take, um, and who knows what the Beach Boys left on the cutting room floor,
yeah,
but you have one mind, the mind of the director, Brian Wilson,
mhm,
who has a vision and just trying to produce that. Um, yeah, that's really, really appealing. But I think someone like, I mean, maybe you can say a word about Robert Redford, but he seems to have that ease that I don't expect a lot on the cutting room floor from him.
mm. Well, I think that there is sometimes a danger, and we were just talking about it with regards to Beach Boys music.
Yeah.
That which seems easy is not necessarily
Right.
easy.
Yeah.
And I think Robert Redford talked a lot about how he felt like he had to work more than, say, Paul Newman, who they did a couple films together.
Right.
And I think in his mind, he saw Paul Newman as kind of like that guy that just kind of saunters in.
But yeah,
and and just has this ease and coolness to him. Robert Redford, I think he had it, but I think with both men, there was a lot of work that went underneath the surface that is just part of our willingness sometimes, or our tendency sometimes, to try to undervalue that which looks easy.
yeah, we can't tell.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
because we can't tell, our assumption is that it's easy because it would be hard for us. And so we assume that what looks easy to somebody else must actually indeed be easy. But I'm not quite sure that that's the right way to look at it.
well, Newman talked about himself as an actor, and how as he got older, he was trying to make it the impression that he's not working and acting so hard, you know.
Right.
So I think they both probably talk because it seems like of all the actors, they're the most watchable. There's something engaging, and there's an ease to it. Um, but who knows?
When I see them, I and it kind of reminds me of me actually, when I look at them.
Well, I get that about Robert Redford.
But well, who knows? But I think in the core of this whole message is the idea that we should seek what is hard to do. We should seek what is difficult in our day-to-day life, because that is the mind exerting control over the body. That is the mind exerting will over the body. And so, I don't know. I think for me, I think that's what it is that you should be trying to accomplish. And if you can manage that, I think you're well on your way.
Well, Herr Miller, you're not like Athena just bursting forth fully formed out of Zeus's head. You you developed some of this discipline, and it wasn't just by the United States Marine Corps. There's something that you had before.
That helped.
Well, it did, maybe, but you weren't some ne'er-do-well. I mean, you
No,
talked about your upbringing, and you already had that. Is that correct?
I had it, but it's like anything. When you consistently try to do what's hard, it gets fine tuned, whether it's sharpening the sword or whatever analogy you choose to use. But with each thing that you achieve that is hard, it creates that desire to do hard things more. It also creates the ability to do hard things. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to mold something, you're trying to create something. But no one, no one comes into this world fully, you know, established.
Well, to to play your metaphor forward, the idea of metal sharpening metal, iron sharpening iron, whatever that, I mean,
Mhm.
as a teacher, I don't know anybody who was better at that than you, as far as putting not just uh, putting something really challenging to all students. I mean, they're every last one of the students you had, you challenged them, and they, for the most part, rose up to it. But that's what you did. That was your superpower in the classroom.
Well, it was certainly my hope and my goal,
Hmm.
and it's hard to know to what extent it was successful or not, but I know it was successful
Hmm.
from time to time, and so now my focus is my daughter to a certain extent along
Hmm.
those same lines. I think it's not quite the same dynamic, of course, because a child is almost intuitively opposed to the excessive demands of a parent, but also not to be excessive about it. But this is kind of the next stage. I mean, parenthood is that next hard thing to do, but you're trying to instill those same lessons and hope that in the same way that your father's lessons left a mark, hopefully yours do as well.
I'd like to say it's the best teaching I've done, is
Mm,
with the three kids, for sure. And so we've developed that.
right.
But the idea of leisure, I will say it's an area that I could improve
Mm.
for sure. I need to be more present in those moments and not jumping ahead to the work.
Well, I think if this has taught us anything is that we all have things to do. We all have improvements to make. We are not yet fully formed, even at our advanced ages. You more so than me, it should be said. But
It's not that different. We're from the same generation.
more or less, yeah. So,
Bastard.
well, what a great conversation. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We appreciate it, and we are very grateful for you tuning in. With that, as you said earlier, there is football to watch, and they're not going to watch themselves. And so we shall say adieu, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
Auf Wiedersehen, Herr Müller.